Welcome to Perfect Night In. I'm your host Neil Perryman, and today's guest is the stand-up comic Phil Pagett. Hello Phil, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Neil. How are you?
I'm fine, and you've come today to share your perfect night in with us, isn't that right?
That's as I understand it, yes.
Where are you spending your perfect night in? What does the room look like?
Room is it's a pretty standard living room, but I don't want to go into too much detail because it's not an interior design show.
Okay Phil, so you're sat in your nondescript living room. How are we going to start your perfect night in?
We're wide awake. It's good to know you're ready and you're wide awake. So on your marks and get set, go. It's work today, no school today. Here's what you've got to do. Forget the pause, put down your tools, see what we've got for you. Oh, whack a day, what's that? Wait and see who's on fire now. Stay tuned. Okay, let's go. It's whack a day.
It's Whack-A-Day. It stands for Wide Awake Club a Day, I think. I wanted to pick a kids show, but I thought rather than pick one that was kind of cool that I would still watch now, I tried to think of something that really genuinely got me excited when I was a kid. And there's really nothing that quite matches the excitement I had for Whack-A-Day at the time. Timmy Mallet, I mean, looking back on him, I can't see really what the appeal was, other than the fact that he wore very, very colourful clothes and a hat, and he had his what I assume was a rubber mallet. And when you look at it now, it does kind of, there is something incredibly phallic about it. But it didn't occur to me at the time. He had a game called Mallet's Mallet, which was a kind of word association game. So he would have two children either side of him, and he would start them off with a word, say egg, one of them, then the next one would have to say chicken, and then the next one would have to say nugget, but if any of them paused, if they skipped a beat, he would bonk them on the head with his mallet.
Okay, well, whoever wins this one, of course, goes to the big final, gets a chance to win the Hit 6 LP. Okay, here's the mallet, and don't forget, it's a word association game. Mustn't pause, mustn't hesitate, bashing the head like this, or like this. One with the most bruises loses. Look at each other, go bleh. Look at them and go bleh. Look back and go bleh. Good, and the word is fish.
Mallet's Mallet is basically the technique I use whenever I'm comparing as a comic, and you have to sort of keep the momentum going and think of something off the top of your head without sort of letting the audience know that you've got nothing to say. Mallet's Mallet is what I use. I just use whatever the last word that's been said. I'll just try and think of something. So it stayed with me in that way.
Now it's time for our cookery spot. Today we'll be showing you how to make a glass of water. You
had Mike Myers and Neil Malarkey doing a thing called the Sound Asleep Club. It was, I think, Mike Myers' TV debut. I don't know how he ended up on it, but so there'd be little sketches like that. And then there would be sort of pieces about news, I guess. My favourite clip is one that I know that you're aware of, which is Timmy Mallet doing a piece on apartheid.
Now, these pictures show exactly the same things come in different colours, and so do people. South Africa used to be the most unpopular country in the world, wide awake, because of the way it treated its people, and for a long time people said it's not fair. Well, finally, things have begun to change.
Which is as bizarre as it sounds. The weirdest thing, I mean, I don't know how it came about. I suspect that he got a sniff of a free trip from this, because there's no real reason for him to cover it. It wasn't really in the programme's remit. And so he goes to South Africa and does a piece to camera about how a silly rule called apartheid means that the black people and the white people can't play together.
I just think they used to have stupid rules and regulations which said that you couldn't even be friends together. Daft.
It's not badly done. You expect it to be a complete toe-curling embarrassment. But it actually, in its way, explains the situation quite well. And I think that could have been the start of a career as a television journalist. He could have you could have sent him to cover the Rwandan genocide. He could have done AIDS. Clearly he had a bit of a knack for it, and it seems that he didn't pursue it further. all I can say is that I really, really responded to whatever it was he was doing when I was a kid. He had a single out, and I had the 7-inch, and it was called Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini, which was that was a track from the 60s, wasn't it?
I like it. Oh, yeah. I like it.
But his outfit, his pop outfit was called Bomblerina. It was him, it was Timmy Mallet and 2 dancers. One of whom is now Mrs. Gary Barlow. And the record was produced by Andrew Lloyd Webber, uncredited. But if you know where to look. I mean, there are some nasty rumours going around, Neil, that it's not actually Timmy Mallet singing on the record and that he used a kind of ghost singer. But, you know, I'll file that along with the 9/11 truthers. The video had a young lady in a very small bikini, you know, with Timmy Mallet kind of writhing around on a hammock and going, oh yeah. You wouldn't really get away with that nowadays, I don't think. I don't think a kids presenter would put themselves in that position. But, you know, that it was a simpler time, Neil.
So Timmy Mallet takes us up to 6:30, and your next choice is...
It's Batman, the animated series. For my generation, I think that animated series became kind of our definitive Batman. It was a beautifully produced show. The whole aesthetic of it was that it was kind of timeless. It had a kind of 30s look about it in the way the characters dressed. It also had a kind of 50s thing going on. It had Danny Elfman's theme tune from the Tim Burton movies. And I think I'm right in saying that they used to paint the animation cells onto a black background, which is unusual. Not obviously, normally they do it onto white, but in order to give it this kind of gloomy, this oppressive kind of noirish feel, it was all done onto black. It also is reminiscent of those Max Fleischer Superman cartoons in terms of how the characters are depicted and stuff. And Kevin Conroy, who did the voice of Batman, is the definitive Batman performance for me. I don't know what it is particularly about his voice, but it's lodged in my brain. So if I read a Batman comic now, it's his voice that I hear doing Batman.
Is it a very deep voice? Is it like, I'm Batman?
It kind of is, but it doesn't feel... You know the way when Christian Bale does it? It feels like he's really putting effort in to go... Rah, rah, rah. Kevin Conroy does it in a much... It seems to... It seems to fit him a lot better, and it doesn't seem like he's straining.
A year ago, Ferris Boyle interrupted an experiment, and in the process destroyed 2 lives. Here's the evidence.
One of the things about the Batman the animated series is that it was so well received that it some of the elements from it were incorporated into the kind of Batman official canon. So most notably, the character of Harley Quinn, who's been very popular for the last 20 years. She came from an episode of this. And also the backstory for Mr. Freeze. This version of Mr. Freeze is now kind of the version of Mr. Freeze, which is they make him a kind of sympathetic character. He's a scientist who's been befallen by an accident, which is not that unusual for a villain. But his wife is suffering from a terminal disease. And so he's frozen her in order to give himself time to develop a cure. And there's there's quite a moving image in this of Mr. Freeze, close up of Mr. Freeze's face, a single tear sort of developing from the corner of his eye, and then it sort of freezes over and dissipates into ice. And it's stuck with me, that has. And also the guy who did the voice, Michael Ansara, who is I think he's dead now, not as a result of doing that voice, but he his performance is really chilling in it because he completely strips all humanity out of his voice, and I remember hearing a story about him recording this, and the producer saying, "Just take it down," and then he would do a take, and they'd say, "No, take it down even further," and he managed to hit on this really eerie way of speaking.
The cold eyes of vengeance are upon you, Boyle.
Who are you?
Come now. Surely you remember your old colleague, Victor Fries.
It makes him kind of robotic, but still, you still don't lose empathy for him. It's really, really well done.
Okay, that takes us up to 7 o'clock, and your next choice, Phil, is...
BBC Television presents Tony Hancock in Hancock's Half Hour.
I've chosen The Economy Drive. It's kind of a typical episode in some ways. I don't think it's one that people pick out as, one of the really famous ones. It comes from later on in the run, and if you watch some of the very early ones, some of the very early TV ones, they're much more theatrical. They have a lot more to do with kind of sketch comedy in a way. They're kind of off the wall. They use a lot of dream sequences, and the plots are a lot more cartoonish. But the time you get to this stage, they've kind of developed into being a bit more grounded. And this is one of the most grounded episodes, and you can almost imagine this taking place in some version of reality. So I really like it for that reason. It's got a lot of great interplay between Hancock and Sid. This is them on sort of really good bickering form.
You won't get anything out of that.
Why not?
I had it cut off. See? I didn't forget everything, did I?
You had it cut off. The one thing in the house you can leave on without it costing anything, and you had it cut off. and it cost money to have it put back on again as well.
The sort of centrepiece of the episode is Hancock going for lunch at this, I assume it's some sort of cafe, but it doesn't look like any cafe that I've ever seen in my life. They have this kind of like take your pick system with doors with plates of food behind them. I mean, do you think that was a prop that was left over from something else that they thought, oh, we can use this? It was you open up a random door and you just take whatever's behind it, regardless of what it is. That sounds reasonable.
We've got all this to look forward to after Brexit.
Yes, that's true. Except there'll only be 2 doors.
Just a minute, please. That's mine.
How'd you make that out? First come, first served, old boy.
Yes, well, I know, and I was first.
Not to that compartment. Excuse me.
That is my place and chips. If I hadn't asked, you wouldn't have known what it was.
Oh, don't be ridiculous. I come here every day. I know where they keep the plates and chips. Excuse me.
They're my words. Swipe me.
So it's a bit of a tour de force sort of performance, isn't it? It goes from him being very determined to get a particular meal down to, as a result of misfortune and his own mismanagement of the situation, he ends up with a single bread roll and some ketchup. But then someone comes and... I'm spoiling here, spoilers, but someone comes and collects it while he's bending over. And so he accuses the guy next to him of stealing his bread roll. And that's a proper, like, that's what Hancock was really good at, which is this complete conviction that he's right in a situation, and sort of going in all guns blazing, even though we, the audience, know that he's completely barking up the wrong tree. I really love Tony Hancock. One of the things I love about him is that I don't fully understand how his comedy works. I recognise that he's kind of satirising a particular kind of post-war pomposity, I think. But there's something in the way that he delivers the jokes, and something about his physicality that is just that it seems kind of magical, and I really struggled to pigeonhole him in a particular category. He's a real one-off, I think.
Where were you when you were first introduced to Tony Hancock?
Well, there's a monument to him in Birmingham city centre. I'm from Birmingham, by the way. So I saw that as a kid, and I was always sort of intrigued by it. I later found out that he didn't live in Birmingham at all. He was born in Birmingham, and then his family moved away when he was still a baby. But that's, the Birmingham City Council still thought it was worth commemorating the fact that he was here for about 3.5 weeks. So I was fascinated by the image of him, and then I saw I kind of been very old, probably about 7 or 8. I saw some sort of Saturday afternoon repeats on BBC Two, but liked them. But I really got into it, I think, when I was about 18 or 19, and I saw a number of the TV episodes, but I heard a lot of the radio ones as well. And it became a little bit of an obsession for a while. And I think in technical terms, it's very dated, and it's sort of very it's a very, very much a sitcom prototype, and they haven't quite ironed out all the ways in which they're going to produce television like this. But in terms of the characters and the performances and the writing, I think it's aged a lot better than a lot of other stuff of its time.
Hancock takes us up to 7:30, and I think it's time for some snacks. What have you got, Phil?
I've got a tub of Haagen-Dazs pralines and cream. I not particularly endorse Haagen-Dazs as a company, but I don't know of another company that does that type of ice cream. So a tub of that will probably last me the evening.
Do you not fancy any crisps?
I could probably do a packet of Monster Munch.
Which flavour?
Well, that's the thing. All 3 flavours of Monster Munch are brilliant, aren't they?
Pickled onion's my favourite.
Yeah, I mean, they're all. I'm not going to take you to task on that. I probably would say the beef ones, but I think pickled onion is a perfectly valid choice.
Which is all very nice and filling for him, but not so for his somewhat smaller friends. However, while he's enjoying his dream, guess who's enjoying his Monster Munch? Monster Munch from Smith's in 3 flavours. The biggest snack pennies can buy.
The next programme you've chosen is another comedy at 7:30, and it's another programme I've never seen.
It's fantastic, Frasier, because it's a kind of comedy that American sitcoms don't do all that often, which is ostensibly about class. And as we know, the most of the best sitcoms, they thrive on the differences of the principal characters and the way that their respective values collide with each other when they're in a contained situation. And Frasier and Martin, Frasier's dad, are two they're very, very different people. If you wanted to be really, really broad about it, and they never go this specific in the show, Martin is kind of a typical Republican, and Frasier is a kind of a typical Democrat. So I think that's the area that they're operating in. But they never nail their colours to the mast on that kind of thing.
The episode you've chosen is Ham Radio. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, Frasier every now and again would do an out-and-out farce. I'd say this is the best farce they ever did. And its farce episodes are I would say, and I know this is big words, but I'd say they're as good as Fawlty Towers.
There's someone outside that window!
Why, yes, Miss Thorndyke. It appears to be... the ice cream truck!
This episode in particular I remember seeing this when I was about 11 or 12 and just laughing till it hurt. It was just the funniest thing. And it's based around Frasier decides to put on a live broadcast of a murder mystery detective story. Because he's such a control freak and can't accept any feedback and can't manage people, he can't keep the cast happy. He recruits people from the radio station to play all the various parts, and when the broadcast goes live, obviously it completely unravels bit by bit by bit.
The final bullet blew his head clean off his shoulders. All right, people, let's try to keep calm, although it's hard when the killer is among us.
Hi-ho, I'm Nigel's brother Cedric. I haven't seen him since our boyhood.
And so died the last surviving member of the Fire Service family.
Farce functions on there being a figure of fear that's haunting the proceedings off stage, so the panic is there. And in this case, the only panic is the fact that this is going out live and it's going to be really embarrassing for Frasier if it goes wrong. But because within the episode it's going out live, there's a real kind of palpable sense of Frasier's mental breakdown as it unfolds.
When we've finished, you'll know the full dark secret of Nightmare Inn.
Are you through with it, Hans?
Be quiet, mother.
It's a brilliant piece of sitcom writing, beautifully performed, and I really recommend that you go and watch at least some episodes of Frasier.
Frasier takes us nicely up to 8 o'clock, so what's next, Phil?
This is not a holiday camp. This is a business proposition from heaven.
Lord Sugar is searching for a brand new business partner.
Forget about Brexit. In this process, I'm the one who decides who's going to remain and who's going to leave.
It's The Apprentice. It's got, I think, and this is probably contrary to popular opinion, I think it's got better throughout the years. And the reason I think it's got better is that it's abandoned all pretense of it being a serious business show and just really leaned into the ridiculousness of what it asks all the people to do. It knows full well that the tasks bear no relation to anything that anyone's ever going to realistically face in business. And it doesn't matter. It's actually, I think it's got a lot more in common with things like the Generation Game than it has with a serious business show, because it's sort of giving people a task that you know they're going to fail at, and sort of reveling in watching exactly how they fail.
Did you know what the octopus was?
We didn't understand exactly what the 40-inch hose referred to, but we found that out later on.
Did you?
We didn't actually get that confirmed.
An octopus with a 40-inch hose, it's a piece of diving equipment, OK? It's something to help people breathe underwater. But you bought an actual, real, live octopus, right?
Well, it was dead.
It might have been dead the time you finished measuring its bloody tentacles.
What's great about it as well is that the very things that have got them to be successful in whatever field they're successful in are the very things that are going to be working against them in the process of being on The Apprentice. So single-mindedness, bullishness, inability to work in a team. You know, I like a lot of the individual rounds. I look forward to each year. The treasure hunt one is always a highlight.
Hey guys, we're actually on our way to pick up a Hasira.
We already collected the Hasira, don't worry about the Hasira.
You've already got it?
Have you already got it? Because we're right outside the shop.
We've got the Hasira ready, We've got the Hasira already, we've got the Hasira, don't worry about that.
You never told us you got it, so we've wasted loads of time. So tell me now, you're getting the wine and the honeycomb, is that correct?
We're getting the wine and the honeycomb, we're also going to look for the salt as well. Get the filigree boat and the Maltese house, get those, yeah?
Yeah, thank you.
They should have told us.
They've been here all day.
Also, another highlight I always enjoy is the interviews round, which happens sort of second to last week, something like that.
they usually tear their business plans apart. But so how do they get on the programme in the first place if their business plans are so bad?
That would be how I answered in one of those interviews. When Claude or whoever it is says, well, we've spoken to your secondary school, and it turns out that you didn't even you didn't attend there. You were actually homeschooled, and you didn't even do very much of that. And then you say that you started this business, but actually, we've looked on Company's House, and it was your mate Alan who did that. And we've looked at this university doesn't even exist that you claim that you've gone to, and etc. 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 Your business plan doesn't work. Yeah, you're trying to sell slippers to people with no feet. Yeah, and I would just sit there and say, well, yeah, fair enough, all good points, and yet here I am. I am the best you could do. You could have had anyone get to this stage in this competition, and you chose me.
Have you got my business accounts there?
I do.
How did you get hold of them?
It's a public document.
Oh, okay.
So, first of all, you don't have 4.5% gross profit.
Oh.
And also you talk about a turnover of £8,000 per week. Do you know what turnover is?
Yeah, the amount of money that we make, the amount of money we turn over. Was it the amount of money that we take?
Yeah. Sales, perhaps?
Sales, yes.
Right. Your accounts don't show 400,000 turnover.
That's a very persuasive argument you make for The Apprentice, Phil, but how can you enjoy a show that's unleashed so much evil on the world?
There is that. But I've never watched the American version, not when Donald Trump was on it and not when Arnold Schwarzenegger was on it. Katie Hopkins, well, there's always a fly in the ointment, isn't there? But I'm sure if it wasn't The Apprentice that she made her name on, it would have been another reality show.
Okay, that takes us up to 9 o'clock and change of gear, and the next choice is...
They're off. All the girls a little bit slowly away. Serious hurry. Breaks very fast from TM and Hinari video in the early stages. Then Kalara...
Cracker.
The episode you've chosen is the first two parts, which is called Mad Woman in the Attic.
Yes, the very first one. I discovered Cracker when I was at university, I think. In fact, I know, I was at university, and I'd never really seen a British drama like it. I find a lot of British dramas, they seem to think that they have to be unremittingly earnest, so that all of the characters have to be incredibly serious 100% of the time. No moments of levity whatsoever. And I don't believe that anyone, even in the world of medicine or law or anything like that, I don't believe that people are that serious that much of the time. And I think it's I think it's a kind of failing of British drama in a way, that they can't strike the kind of balance that American dramas do. So Cracker, it was kind of a revelation in that that's exactly what it did. I mean, Fitz is as funny as any sitcom character, and he's one of those characters where I've got loads of his lines just in my head at any given time, and I'm always ready to deploy them.
Give us an example.
Good old-fashioned British justice, where a man is innocent until proven Irish. I only really like the episodes that Jimmy McGovern wrote. So this episode is one of them, and it opens. The first time we see Fitz, he arrives onto the stage in a lecture hall and starts throwing books at students. Which nowadays you probably wouldn't get away with, would you? I think the term is assault. But, in the 90s, again, it was a simpler time. And so straight away you think, oh, this guy's a bit of a loose cannon, you think. I'm betting he's going to be a bit of a maverick. He's incredibly brusque, isn't he? And I think that I think that might be part of why I responded to him, is that he kind of reminds me a little bit of Tom Baker's Doctor Who, in how dismissive he is of anyone who he deems as beneath him, which is everyone.
I think he might be innocent.
What? You didn't even consider that, eh? You got yourself a suspect, so all your energy is concentrated into proving that he did it. You could prove he didn't do it, but where would that get you? Classic policing error. You piss off back to your clinic.
He's quite unpleasant, isn't he? And yet, you can imagine enjoying his company. This particular episode is about a guy who's lost his memory, who's the kind of the prime suspect in a murder case. And the debate between Fitz and Bilborough is, Bilborough is saying this guy's not lost his memory, he's just refusing to talk. And Fitz isn't convinced that is the case. But a lot of really interesting ideas are thrown into it as well. There's a scene in which a woman claims to be the guy's wife, calls up claiming to be the guy's wife, and he thinks that once he meets her, he's going to get his memory back, and he thinks, oh, I've got a wife, this must be it. But it turns out that she's just someone who's seen him on TV, and because he's accused of being a murderer, she's taken a shine to him.
Women, eh? Suppose me'd shown your face in the telly. I'd just come right out with it. This man is suspected of murder. They'd all have fallen for you, not just the one. They've phoned in their droves. Can I have some more? Sure. Dirty Dan mean anything to you? EastEnders? No. Well, I had this idea. A soap opera, right? And all the actors, not the characters, mind you, all the actors are convicted murderers. 15 million viewers, all of them women, no problem. All drooling at the mouth. Women, eh?
There is a kind of a certain section of society that have a kind of murderer fetish, isn't there? So it never occurred to me prior to watching that episode. Another thing watching it now that strikes me is people smoking indoors constantly. It's any drama where people are doing that when you watch it now it seems like another world, doesn't it? These were halcyon days of Great Britain.
You're too young to feel nostalgic.
I can remember smoking indoors. Maybe not in betting shops, as Fitz does all the time. What really sets it apart from other, good procedurals are the scenes where Fitz talks to the suspect and asks questions that seemingly aren't really connected to where it's going to go, and the joy in watching him get on their particular wavelength and their spotting their flaws in order to unravel, their mental state. It's fabulous.
Big mistake. It's just what you were looking for, isn't it? That first sign of weakness, vulnerability. You'll strike now. You'll kill now, won't you? Huh? Stop this. It's your mission in life, women like that, isn't it? Acting tough, in control, showing a bit of thigh, treating you like dirt when they look. Well, you show her exactly what's what, won't you? You put her in her place. You can read her like a book. She's not tough. You'll put her in her place for keeps, won't you?
Stop this! Those two episodes of Cracker takes us up to 10:50, but before we start your final choice, Phil, can I get you a drink?
Can I have a black coffee? Is that all right? Or is it...
Black coffee?
Yeah.
Any particular brand?
Kenko Millicano, please.
Good choice.
Yeah, but I haven't got a cafetiere or anything like that. It's just instant, but upmarket instant. I pay £5 a jar.
I'll just pop off and make you one as we introduce your final choice.
This is a documentary called The Secret Life of Bob Monkhouse, which was broadcast on BBC 4 in, I think it was 2011. And I think there's been a lot of documentaries about the life of Bob Monkhouse, because he's a genuinely had a genuinely fascinating life, and really seems to have been quite a complex person. And some of the documentaries have been a bit, for want of a better word, a bit more ITV. You know, they're a bit more sort of celebrating him as a comedian, which is all very, which is great. But this one is a bit more even-handed, I would say. It kind of tells the story of Bob Monkhouse's life and career, but through the prism of his obsessive cataloguing and hoarding, which he was kind of known for. I think certainly after his death, this became more apparent, the extent to which this had gone on. But he used to, he had a big shed in his garden that had thousands upon thousands of VHS tapes of programs he'd recorded. After he died, it came out that he had a lot of stuff that didn't exist anywhere else. So there's interviews with people like Lenny Henry about how his first appearance on TV wasn't in the archive, but Bob Monkhouse had it. There's clips of Bob Monkhouse's final episode of The Golden Shot, where he was just letting rip at the whole production and sort of having a pop at Norman Vaughan, who was his successor, and he's really genuinely really pissed off in that episode. I'm a big fan of Bob Monkhouse generally. As a comedian, I didn't really come to appreciate how good he was as a stand-up until I was kind of in my early to mid-20s, I would say. Despite the fact that he'd been one of those people who was just ever present on TV when I was a kid. But I'd see him on things, like Celebrity Squares or presenting the National Lottery draws. He was just he was a kind of like a jack of all trades. He was just like the BBC's kind of supply teacher presenter at that point in his career. He'd just be brought in whenever no one else could be asked. So he would just. I was aware of him as a public figure, but I don't even think I realised he was a comedian until much later, and I didn't realise how adult his comedy as a stand-up was, which was a big surprise because he was kind of Mr. Clean-cut, slick game show host kind of guy, wasn't he? The equivalent now would be finding out that someone like Philip Schofield did stand-up in working men's clubs and was incredibly foul-mouthed.
I've heard it been said that Bob Monkhouse is, is the stand-up comic, if you know what I mean. Is that true?
Yeah, I think so. I think for a lot of people, there's clips and there was a separate documentary made of this, but there's clips in this of his final performance, which was, I think it was literally weeks before he eventually died.
Mm-hmm.
And he's performing to a room full of kind of the alternative comics of that time, so it was like early 2000s. So Reece Shearsmith's there, Kevin Day's there, John Culshaw, David Walliams is there, and it's a bizarre thing because that's, as a comedian, that's the last gig you'd ever want to do. Is just a room just full of comedians. It would be hellish. And yet to him it was like that's exactly what he did want to do. He loved comedy, and he was one of those people who would send the lift back down. You know, he would always bring new comic talent that he liked onto TV shows where perhaps they, you know, might have been their first break into that kind of thing. But he was, even as a kid, he was obsessive about comedy. He would write down the jokes that he'd heard on radio. He would try and write jokes in the style of Bob Hope. Comedians can be notoriously sluggish in getting to work. You know, their procrastination is usually the kind of mean setting. So to see someone who is that creatively charged, and it came across in his stand-up as well. You know, he was always he was just a kind of onslaught of gags and punchlines, and had a joke for any subject. It's definitely something that I aspire to, is that sort of having that kind of catalogue brain. And he also didn't seem like the sort of person who would obsessively catalogue episodes of TV shows. He would even do things like he'd keep TV listings, and if a programme ran long and the subsequent programme was, you know, 5 minutes late or whatever, he would correct the TV listings before he kept it in his files. He would add cast members that didn't make it into the Radio Times listings. No idea how he managed to find the time to do all this. It's not like, you know, a load of gigabytes on a hard drive. It's like you see the physical space that all these VHS tapes are taking up, and you think it's like this is like a guy's life's work in a weird way, and that's separate to his actual career.
So that's Phil Pagett's Perfect Night In, starting at 6 o'clock with Whack-A-Day, and that's followed by Batman the Animated Series at 6:30. At 7 begins a whole hour of comedy with a classic Hancock's Half Hour, followed at 7:30 by a great episode of Frasier. The Apprentice is at 8, with a feature-length outing for Robbie Coltrane as Cracker at 9. And it's all rounded off at 10:50 with The Secret Life of Bob Monkhouse. Sounds like a perfect night in.
Those were fabulous choices, Phil. Thank you very much for being my guest.
Oh, thank you, Neil. It's my pleasure.
I've just got one last question for you, and that is, who would you like to share your perfect night in with?
This might not be the answer that you wanted, but I'm going to say I'm going to watch all this stuff on my own. I don't want to have to share my Haagen-Dazs. The chances of finding another human being who's as impressed by Batman the Animated Series and Hancock's Half Hour, you know, I think that the intersection of that Venn diagram is pretty slim. But I'll have a great time on my own. Don't worry about me.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, Neil.
It's a perfect night in.